Yo, what is up, guys? It's Cohen back here again today with another video. NBA free agency is just a day away. Starting tomorrow, teams can negotiate with different free agents. The tampering period officially begins, even though we all know as NBA fans that starts way earlier between players, and tampering really doesn't exist in the NBA as it is currently organized. So there are probably already a bunch of deals that will get announced the second free agency opens, but I wanted to put this video out before any of those get announced so I could kind of give you my thoughts on some of the top free agents, where I think they end up. I'll make predictions for a lot of the top guys. For some of the lower level guys, I won't make a prediction because there's so many more options that they could end up going to, but I'll kind of give my thoughts on each of the free agents. Shout out to James Herbert here at CBS for organizing this list of some of the top free agents. Shout out to him. I appreciate you guys watching this video. Make sure you subscribe because I'm going to be dropping reactions to pretty much every single free agency move or every big move that happens. Maybe I'll do like a nightly recap thing with every free agency move that happened. So if you want to see that, make sure you drop a subscribe and let me know in the comment section below. Drop a like on the video too while you're at it. So let's go ahead and get into this. So they have it organized in different tiers. This one is all-star caliber vets. For example, we have Mike Conley here. First free agent, I think that is going to stay. I think Mike Conley stays in Utah. I don't see any reason why he would leave. Had probably the best season of his career if you just want to go off the fact that he was an all-star for the first time. Crazy high plus minus. Part of the team that had the best record in the NBA. They fell short in the playoffs to a Clippers team that was shorthanded, which is disappointing. But with the way that the success went, and I think that there's rumors that they're going to offer him like a 3-year, $60 million deal for a 33-year-old point guard. That is a great deal that you want to go with. I think Mike Conley ends up re-signing, and I think they end up trying to run it back. Next, we have Kyle Lowry. I think he's gone. I think Kyle Lowry I think there's like almost a 0% chance that he remains in Toronto. They didn't end up trading him at the trade deadline, despite everyone assuming he was going to get moved. Held on to him, and now I think they're going to lose him for nothing. But keeping your franchise guy, not trading him, I guess, is a win for the Toronto Raptors. So there are a couple different destinations that I could see him ending up. There are 3 teams that specifically I think really need a point guard, or even 4. We can mention Chicago, New York, Dallas, and New Orleans are the 4 that come to mind, as well as some of those other teams like the Clippers, but they don't quite have the cap space. The Sixers could maybe do a sign and trade with Ben Simmons, but ultimately I think Kyle Lowry ends up in one of either New Orleans or Dallas. Not quite sure which one it's going to be. If I had to pick one now, I'll go with Dallas. Do I want to do Dallas? Actually, I'll go New Orleans. I think Kyle Lowry ends up in one of New Orleans or Dallas. Right now, I'll lean New Orleans. I think he would be a great fit for that team. Either team he ends up on, he's going to really help them out. If he ends up on a Dallas quickly becomes really scary. I could see him either one of those positions, but I think I'll go with New Orleans. I'm just letting you know, about 99% of these predictions are going to be wrong, so just to let you know. Next, DeMar DeRozan. He's one that I could see going to Dallas or New York are probably the first 2 that come to mind. Both teams that could really use some offense. He's a good playmaker too, so he could really help out in either of those positions. Both teams that need scoring as well as playmaking. If I had to pick one right now, I'm going to go with Dallas. I think there was just a report I was seeing that he's interested in the possibility of that. He could also take a pay cut and go to the Lakers, but I think Dallas is a good mix where even if they strike out on kind of like a point guard, they could put DeMar DeRozan next to Luka and Kristaps and be pretty effective, having Luka run the 1, bring back Tim Hardaway Jr. maybe and have him run the 2 with a DeRozan at the 3 or the 4, Kristaps at either the 4 or the 5, and I think you quickly have a pretty good roster that's kind of ready to compete in the West if Kristaps and the role players step up. Next, we have John Collins. This starts our restricted free agency tier. John Collins is going to be back. They made an Eastern Conference Finals run. I don't see why they wouldn't retain him. I think he ends up signing between a $20 and $25 million per year deal. Not a bad deal. It's more so paying him for what he can become than what he is now, even though now he is a good player. Fits great next to Trae Young. I think he's going to be back. Lonzo Ball, on the other hand, I think is gone. I don't see any way the Pelicans end up bringing him back. All the rumors have been that he's leaving, and I think he ends up in Chicago. I think it makes good sense for Chicago. Bring in a young point guard to go alongside their young star in Zach LaVine. Patrick Williams is another young, interesting piece. Pair them next to Vucevic, who is an established all-star level talent, and you quickly have a really fun roster. Lonzo Ball is a good defender who can help out Zach LaVine, who is getting better as a defender, but is still meh at defense. But he's a great scorer. Lonzo's a great playmaker. I think they're a great fit together in the backcourt. Bruce Brown, he's going to stay in Brooklyn. There are some guys I'm not going to say much about. Bruce Brown's cool. He's going to stay in Brooklyn. Duncan Robinson, I think, stays in Miami. He's one that I could see leaving, but I think ultimately the Miami Heat value his shooting, especially next to two guys who aren't great shooters in Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo as their studs. You want a guy like Duncan Robinson who can shoot the hell out of the ball. He's going to get paid because that's what shooters demand in the modern NBA, but I think it's a contract that they're going to end up giving him. Devontae Graham is an interesting one. He's someone that I could see going to one of those teams I mentioned before that kind of need a point guard. If one of those teams ends up striking out in free agency from one of those stars, I could see him going there. But I think he ends up staying in Charlotte. I think he's a good fit there. He helps out. He's a good backup point guard for them, and I think they want to keep him. Malik Monk, on the other hand, I think he is a guy that is gone. There's just not really room for him. Now that they drafted James Bouknight, it doesn't make sense to bring back Malik Monk. He's going to ask for too much money, and when you already have Terry Rozier, you have LaMelo Ball, you have Malik Monk, James Bouknight, and if they keep Devontae Graham, that's too many guards. So I think Malik Monk ends up being the odd one out, and I think he could end a number of places. He had a pretty solid season, so I wouldn't be surprised if he got decent money. Lauri Markkanen, he is gone, I think, and he's a guy I could see ending up on the Spurs. There was a report that maybe they could do a sign and trade, and I think that is the way that Lauri Markkanen is heading. They gave him the qualifying offer. I don't think they're going to match it. I think they would probably prefer to do a sign and trade, and I think Lauri Markkanen could be a good fit, young player on the Spurs, kind of a stable organization that seems to have success with big men. Greg Popovich usually gets the most out of guys, and I think that could be a good spot for Lauri Markkanen to kind of try and reestablish himself as one of the more young, promising players in the league, like a lot of people saw him a couple seasons ago. Taylor Horton-Tucker, I think he stays. I don't see any reason why he's going to leave. I don't think teams are going to pay him a ton of money just because he hasn't proven a lot. We know he's a good player, but just by virtue of being on a super good roster with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, he hasn't gotten a ton of opportunities, so I don't see a team offering him a ton of money. Next, Gary Trent Jr., a guy who has proven himself to be worth a good bit of money. I think the Raptors keep him. I don't see why you would trade for him if you didn't intend on keeping him at the trade deadline for Norman Powell. He is going to demand, I think, between $15 and $20 million. But Gary Trent Jr. is really good. He's someone I'm super high on, and I think they pay him. Get your bag, Gary Trent. Jarrett Allen, also going to get a bag, also going to stay with his team in Cleveland. I think him and Evan Mobley are a great fit next to each other. A lot of people think because they drafted Mobley that Allen is gone, but I think Mobley could be a great 4 next to Allen as a 5. I think they fit well together. Josh Hart, he's a guy that contenders would love. I could see him on any number of contenders. Going back to the Lakers is one of them with a mid-level exception. Going to like a Clippers, going to a Philly is somewhere I could really see getting Josh Hart because he is from Villanova. So that would make sense to kind of go back to his roots there. I like Josh Hart on Philly a lot. That's a fit I could see if they want to use his mid-level or their mid-level exception on him. Some other restricted free agents include Kendrick Nunn. Not sure where he's going to go. Hamidou Diallo and Saben Lee, I think, stay on the Pistons. Zach Collins is a guy that the Thunder have actually been in rumors for. Don't know if that ends up happening. Jared Vanderbilt, I think, ends up staying on the Timberwolves, and a lot of these other guys, I don't know. Unrestricted free agents include Tim Hardaway Jr. I think he ends up staying on Dallas. He was a good fit for them, and I think they end up giving him some money. Spencer Dinwiddie is a guy that I think ends up going somewhere in a sign and trade. It just doesn't feel like there's a role for him. Now, I think he wants more than that bench role, and with James Harden and Kyrie Irving on the roster, he's not going to get that. So I think he ends up going. There was rumors that maybe he ends up in Washington next to Bradley Beal in a sign and trade that includes the Lakers players that the Wizards just got going to the Brooklyn Nets in that sign-in trade. So that includes Kuzma, Montrezl Harrell, maybe even KCP, which I think would be a good trade for the Brooklyn Nets. Add some solid pieces. You lose a star level player, or I guess you can call Spencer Dinwiddie a star. He was really good in the past couple seasons, but adding some depth might be worth that, especially since you proved you really don't need him that much last season, as long as you can stay healthy. Norman Powell, going to stay on the Blazers. You don't trade a young promising player like Gary Trent Jr. unless you want to keep the guy that you trade him for. And why would you're trying to compete. Bring back Norman Powell. Rashawn Holmes, he's a guy that I could see in a number of places, maybe Dallas, if they decide to not bring in a guy like DeRozan. I think he could be a great fit for them. Next to Luka Doncic, he had a great season. I think he's really underrated by a lot of guys. He, I think, could end up in... Where was I going to say? Charlotte. Actually, it says it here. He could end up in Charlotte, maybe. That could be a fun fit for him, although they just drafted Kai Jones, so maybe that isn't the way they go. As well as trading for Plumlee. Yeah, I don't know if he fits in Charlotte anymore after thinking about it that way. But ultimately, I think he ends up back on the Kings. He had a good season there, and they need a center, so I think they'll pay him. Cameron Payne, think he stays on the Suns. Had a great season. Think he likes the organization. They could not like want to match one of the contracts that another team is offering him, but I think being able to talk to him early, since he is their free agent, gives them an advantage, and I think they keep him. Reggie Jackson, I feel like he's gone. Just because I think a team's going to pay him a lot of money. I could see one of those teams, if one of those teams I mentioned, like the Knicks, the Pelicans, or the Mavericks, if one of them strike out on a point guard, I could see Reggie Jackson filling one of those roles. Dennis Schroeder, I've got a weird feeling he ends up on the Knicks. I don't know why, I just do. Victor Oladipo, think he ends up on the Heat. He's not going to get a crazy contract like he wants. I think he's just going to get a short, like, prove-it deal. I think it says somewhere in here. Yeah, he had season-ending quad surgery. He could be sidelined as late as next February. No team's going to pay him a lot of money. The Heat will probably just bring him back. They traded for him. They'll see what happens when he comes back. Kelly Oubre, I think he's gone. I don't think he accepts a bench role, and I think a good fit for him could be the Spurs. I saw some reports that they were considering him and that he thought that could be a good opportunity, so maybe they do a sign and trade there. Alex Caruso feels like a guy that's gone. I think he goes to a contender, maybe looking for a bigger role. Obviously, he already is on a contender in the Lakers, but adding Russell Westbrook definitely takes a little bit away from his role. They could keep him. That's a possibility, but I think he's gone. Kawhi Leonard, getting to some of the biggest names, he's going to stay as a Clipper. I don't see any way he leaves. Being out potentially all of next season, I think it makes sense for him to stay. Plus, he worked so hard to get to LA, asking to be traded to the Lakers when he was leaving the Spurs, ultimately getting traded to Toronto and saying, no, I want to go to LA, signing in Los Angeles with the Clippers next to Paul George. It makes sense. It gives him a chance to compete and be in California where he wants to be. Chris Paul, going to stay with the Suns. Don't see a scenario where he ends up leaving. It would shock me if he left, to be honest. I think he ends up signing like a 3-year, maybe 60 some odd dollar deal. I think he ends up being one of the higher paid guys in this free agency class, and it makes sense. They went to the finals. Why would you not bring him back? Montrezl Harrell took his player option, so he's off the board, and he got traded anyways. Serge Ibaka also picked up his player option, so he's also hanging out. Goran Dragic, they declined his team option. The Miami Heat did. I could see him leaving. I could see maybe like a Lakers or a Dallas. Those are the first teams that come to mind. I think any number of contenders could try and bring him in, but I think that's ultimately where he goes. Maybe he could stay with the Heat too. JaMychal Green, I have no idea where JaMychal Green ends up. Next, we've got Josh Richardson. He got traded, picked up his player option. Made sense. Justice Winslow, they're going to decline his team option. I have no idea where he goes. Bobby Portis, I could see leaving and going to get some more money outside of the Bucks. Derrick Jones Jr. already picked up his player option. Next, this is kind of the tier. I'm not going to give a lot of information about this. Lou Williams, I think, stays in Atlanta. It's where he's from. Makes sense. TJ McConnell, going to stay in Indiana. They're going to pay him. Derrick Rose, I think he goes back to Chicago. I think they end up having the reunion. Patty Mills, weird feeling about the Boston Celtics. I don't know why. Alec Burks, I could see him staying in New York. Avery Bradley is going to go to a contender, and Ish Smith he could stay in Washington. I wouldn't be surprised. And then we have Evan Fournier. This is an interesting one because there was reports that the Celtics don't want to pay him. I get it. You don't want to pay him $20 million a year, but I think they end up finding a compromise. It makes sense. He wants to compete, and they want to compete as well. He gives them the best chance to do that. I think they end up paying him maybe not quite $20 million, but they're going to pay him. Will Barton, I think, stays in Denver. Doug McDermott, I think, stays in Indiana. Reggie Bullock, I think, stays in New York. Danny Green, I think, stays in Philly. Wayne Ellington, I think I could see him going to the Lakers. Sterling Brown, apparently the Mavericks are a front runner for him. Furkan Korkmaz stays in Philly, I think. Otto Porter Jr. is someone that I think could go to any number of contenders. I've got a weird feeling about the Clippers in that regard. Bring in a 3-and-D guy while Kawhi Leonard is out. Next, we just got a couple guys left. I think it's a 45-person list. Jeff Green, I don't know. It would make sense that they want to bring him back, but I wouldn't be surprised if he headed somewhere else. Blake Griffin, think he stays on the Nets. It makes sense. They're going to pay him money, and I think he likes that complimentary role. PJ Tucker, think he stays on the Bucks. Won a championship. Why would you leave? Nerlens Noel, solid backup center. Don't think anyone's going to pay him more than like backup center minutes. So I think he ends up staying in New York. Daniel Tice, they're probably going to lose Lauri Markkanen, so I think the Bulls end up bringing him back. And finally, Nicholas Batum stays with the Clippers. Some more names we have down here include Melo, could go to the Lakers, I think. Same with Dwight Howard. Nemanja Bjelica could fit on many different teams that need shooters, especially contending teams. Rudy Gay is a guy I think ends up on a contender. Trevor Ariza as well. Maybe he stays in Miami. And that's about it. I don't know about the rest of these guys. So those are my thoughts on free agency. Let me know where you think different guys are going. Where is your free agent going? Who are you going to sign? Let me know who your favorite team is and who you're going to end up with. If I'm wrong about these predictions, let me know in the comment section below. Make sure to like and subscribe. Super excited for free agency and all the content I'm going to be putting out. I appreciate you watching. I'll see you guys later. Real